The paper fluttered against my front door like a wounded bird. Red letters screamed foreclosure notice across the top. My hand trembled as I reached for it, October wind biting through my cardigan. The porch boards, the same ones Henry had laid 40 years ago, seemed to shift beneath my feet. My heart hammered so hard I thought my neighbors could hear it. The maples lining our street blazed orange and gold. But all I could see was that cruel red ink bleeding across white paper. Before I continue, subscribe to Front Porch Stories and leave a comment with your city. Because this story might be happening to someone near you. The morning had started like any other. I'd carried my coffee out to the porch at dawn. The steam rising in lazy spirals against the cool air. The wooden boards creaked under my slippers, a familiar song I'd heard 10,000 times. Through the screen door, I could see Henry's photo on the mantel. His smile frozen in 1987, back when his hair was still dark and our dreams seemed infinite. The neighborhood was waking up. Mrs. Chen across the street collected her newspaper in her bathrobe. The Johnson's sprinklers clicked on with mechanical precision. Everything felt ordinary, safe, known. But inside, on the kitchen table, a stack of envelopes sat unopened. White rectangles with cellophane windows, each one a small accusation I couldn't bear to face. Not yet. Not on this peaceful morning. I sipped my coffee and told myself I'd deal with them later. There was always later. A knot of unease twisted in my stomach, but I pushed it down. I was good at that, pushing things down. Pretending the world wasn't shifting beneath me like sand. The letter arrived 3 days later. Official. Clinical. Overdue payments. Final notice. The words swam before my eyes. The bank office smelled like recycled air and desperation. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly blue-white glow. I sat in a plastic chair, clutching my purse, watching numbers flash across screens I didn't understand. The clerk, a young man with gelled hair and a bored expression, barely looked at me as he typed. "Ma'am, according to our records, you're 3 months behind. There are late fees, penalty charges, and interest accumulation. But I've been paying," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "Every month I send the check. Our system shows otherwise." He turned his monitor toward me. Rows of numbers. Red balances. I felt like I was drowning in digits. "I don't understand. This can't be right." He shrugged. A shrug. As if my entire life wasn't crumbling in that moment. "You'll need to resolve this within 30 days, or the property will enter foreclosure proceedings." I left feeling invisible, just another old woman who couldn't manage her affairs. Another case number in their system. Not a person who'd raised 2 children in that house. Who'd nursed her husband through cancer in the bedroom overlooking the garden, who knew every creaking stair and loose doorknob like old friends. It was Tuesday when I found it. The foreclosure notice. Taped to my front door for the world to see. Notice of default. Foreclosure proceedings. The letters screamed in red, angry, final, merciless. My hands shook as I tore it down, crumpling it against my chest as if hiding it could make it disappear. But I wasn't fast enough. Across the street, Mr. Harrison paused mid-step on his way to his car. Our eyes met for one horrible second before he looked away. 2 houses down, Jennifer Martinez stood frozen on her lawn, her hand covering her mouth. They knew. Everyone would know. I stumbled inside and closed the door. The house suddenly felt foreign, like it was already slipping away from me. The kitchen where I'd taught my daughter to bake. The living room where Henry and I had danced on our anniversary. The bedroom where I still slept on my side of the bed, leaving his side empty. All of it marked for seizure. For sale. For strangers. I slid down the door and sat on the floor, that crumpled notice still pressed to my chest. Shame burned through me like fever. How had I let this happen? How had I become this person pitied by neighbors, dismissed by banks, losing everything? The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked relentlessly. Time passing. Time running out. That night, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by papers. Bills. Statements. Letters I'd been too afraid to open. All of it felt like evidence of my failure. A knock at the door made me jump. Through the window, I saw Sarah from next door, a woman in her 40s I'd known since she moved in 5 years ago. She wore a simple blue cardigan and jeans, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "I saw the notice," she said when I opened the door. No pity in her voice, just quiet determination. "Let me help." I wanted to refuse, to protect my pride. But pride doesn't keep a roof over your head. We spread everything across the table, every bill, every statement, every confusing letter filled with financial jargon. Sarah put on her reading glasses and began sorting, her finger tracing lines of numbers, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Wait," she said suddenly. "Look at this. You were charged a late fee in March, but according to this statement, your payment was received on time." She pulled another paper closer. "And here this insurance charge appears twice. Once in April, again in May." My heart began to beat faster, but differently now. Not with fear, with something else. Something that felt almost like hope. "There's more," Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. "These processing fees, you're being charged every single month, but according to your original mortgage terms, there should only be one annual fee." She looked up at me, her eyes bright. "This isn't your fault. They've been overcharging you. Probably for months, maybe years." The kitchen light seemed warmer suddenly. The papers on the table no longer looked like accusations, they looked like evidence. Proof. A weapon we could use to fight back. Mr. Patterson showed up the next morning. He was a heavy-set man with a graying beard, usually dressed in flannel shirts and work boots, the kind of neighbor who'd fix your fence without being asked. Sarah had called him, and he'd brought his toolbox of a different kind, stubbornness and righteous anger. "No bank stealing a house on my street," he said simply. The three of us walked into that bank like soldiers going to battle. The same sterile office. The same fluorescent lights. But this time, I wasn't alone. The manager, a thin man in an expensive suit, tried his practiced smile. "I'm afraid there's nothing we can." "Shut up and listen," Patterson said. Not rudely, but with a finality that stopped the man mid-sentence. He laid our evidence on the desk, highlighted statements, calculations, copies of the original mortgage terms. Sarah spoke next, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "Your institution has been systematically overcharging Mrs. Anderson for at least 18 months. Duplicate insurance charges, unauthorized processing fees, misapplied payments marked as late when they were received on time. That's fraud." I watched in awe as the manager's face shifted from dismissive to uncomfortable. He picked up the papers, his eyes scanning quickly. "I'll need to review." "You'll need to fix it," Patterson interrupted. "Today, and you'll remove that foreclosure notice, or we go to a lawyer. Maybe the news too. I bet they'd love a story about a bank stealing a widow's home through fraudulent charges." The power in the room had shifted. I could feel it. We weren't begging anymore. We were demanding justice. The manager cleared his throat. Let me make some calls." 3 days later, I got the call. The charges had been reviewed. Errors acknowledged. My debt reduced by more than half an amount I could actually manage. The foreclosure was cancelled. I sat in my kitchen and cried. Not quiet tears, but great heaving sobs of relief that shook my whole body. Sarah held my hand. Patterson nodded from the doorway, his eyes suspiciously bright. The doorbell rang. Through my tears, I saw a familiar silhouette. My son, Michael. He'd driven 3 hours from the city. "Mom, I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "I should have been here, should have helped. I didn't know how bad it was, and I was wrapped up in my own life, and..." I pulled him into a hug, breathing in the scent of my child, now a grown man with his own gray hairs showing at his temples. "You're here now," I whispered. "That's what matters." Sarah and Patterson slipped away quietly, giving us privacy. But through the window, I saw them on the porch, smiling at each other, proud of what we'd accomplished together. My house was still mine. My home was still home. Now, as the sun sets behind the maple trees, I sit on my porch with a cup of tea. The same boards creak beneath my rocking chair. Henry's photo watches over me from inside. Everything is the same, yet everything has changed. Buddy the golden retriever from next door comes bounding across the yard, tongue lolling, tail wagging with pure joy. He nearly knocks over my tea, and I laugh. Actually laugh. The sound surprises me. I've learned something these past weeks. A house is not just wood and stone, bricks and mortar. It's not the walls that make it precious, it's what happens within them. The memories baked into every corner. The love that soaked into the foundation. The life that echoed through every room. But I've learned something else too. We're not meant to carry our burdens alone. Community isn't just living near each other, it's showing up when someone's world is falling apart. It's Sarah with her reading glasses and determination. It's Patterson with his growling voice and fierce loyalty. It's neighbors who become family. The bank tried to take my house with numbers and fees and cold calculations. But they couldn't calculate love. They couldn't quantify community. They couldn't account for people who refused to let injustice win. The evening light turns golden, painting everything soft and warm. I raise my teacup in a silent toast to truth, to friendship, to the resilience of the human spirit. My porch, my home, still here, still mine, and I'm still here too.